Revenge films.
My name is Catherine. I live together with my husband, Thomas Smith. Ever since we got married, I was making pretty normal meals for my husband. Nothing that was extraordinary, but my husband always complimented it and told me it was delicious. After that, I started to put more effort into my meals every single day, and at that point, I'd become pretty good at cooking, if I may say so myself. However, there was a reason why my husband was so complimentary of my cooking, and that was because of his mother. My mother-in-law has always been pretty bad at cooking, and ever since my husband graduated from college or moved out, he rarely ever goes home, and he says that he has been avoiding having meals at his family home ever since. Even whenever they go visit his parents, he always insists on ordering takeout or going out to eat at the restaurant, so I never really had tasted his mother's cooking in all those years of being married. But he even told me many times that it wasn't even edible. It didn't just taste bad. My father-in-law was always a quiet man, and I never had heard him complain about the taste of his wife's cooking. But my husband told me that it was unbearably bad. He wouldn't say a word and just get up from the dinner table and go out to dinner. One day, we decided to invite Thomas's parents over to the house and to host them for a meal. As usual, I put a lot of effort in my cooking, and as everybody was eating it, my husband said out loud,
"It's delicious!"
Even though my father-in-law rarely ever said his opinions about the food, he was nodding his head as he was eating and also said,
"Yes, this tastes great!"
I was really happy to see it, and with a smile on my face, I replied thank you. But that my mother-in-law were left alone in the kitchen after the meal, she started harassing me. What was that all about in the dining room? Just because you were given a little compliment. How pathetic. What? Look at you. You were grinning from ear to ear just because you were given some flattery for the food tasting good. Don't you know the word humility? It's more normal to be humble when somebody gives you a compliment. How do you not know that? I'm very sorry. I'll be more careful moving forward. She was yelling at me, and even though I didn't understand what I was apologizing. However, I couldn't understand what my mother-in-law was trying to say. And then, a few more days after that, my mother-in-law suddenly showed up at my door. "Mrs. Smith, what's going on all of a sudden? And with such big luggage as well. If you have contacted me, I would have gone pick you up from your house. I brought over some cooking that I made at home, so let's have dinner together tonight." When I saw the dishes that my mother-in-law had brought over, my jaw dropped to the ground, and certainly not in a good way. Super thick deep-fried meat was pitch black on the outside but burnt red on the inside. And then there was some random meat stew with all kinds of random ingredients in it. There was also a mountain of salad with a hill chopped onions on top, and no matter how much I tried, none of the food on the menu for the evening looked appetizing. At that time, I feel like I finally understood everything that my husband had told me about his mom's cooking. Even if I was trying to flatter her, there was no way that I could say that she was good at cooking. When my husband came home from work, he saw the terrible-looking dishes on the kitchen table and instantly had a concerned look on his face.
Wait, is this what's for dinner tonight?
That's right. Now let's eat. Thank you so much for this meal. As soon as my husband put one bite into his mouth, he started to complain.
What is this? This tastes horrible. Even though my mom is here, why would you serve something this disgusting? What were you thinking, Catherine?
I remember the words my mother-in-law said to me when she yelled at me that other day, so I chose my words very carefully. "I'm very sorry. This is all we had in the fridge. I'm very sorry for making such a terrible dinner." When I said that, my mother-in-law looked uneasy as she tried to turn away from my husband. However, when my husband looked over at her, his face lifted up. "What are you saying? How rude! And Catherine, what do you mean such a terrible dinner? I'm so sorry for cooking you a whole meal and bringing it over for you." "But ma'am, you're the one that told me to say that. You told me to be more humble and not take any compliments." "It depends on the time and place, obviously. I can't believe that you don't even understand that. You truly are terrible, terrible daughter-in-law. I'm going home now. You better not waste that food, do you hear me?" My mother-in-law left the food out there, and then she stormed out of the house furiously. My husband and I thought long and hard about it, but we decided not to waste the food, and so I rearranged my mother-in-law's cooking, and we were somehow able to finish it all. My husband ate his mother's cooking for the first time in years, and it must have been a stark contrast from the meals that he was usually having at home, and so he turned around and thanked me once again for the meals that I was cooking for him every day. And then a couple more days after the incident, one day I called out to my mother-in-law and told to come to the family house by myself. The last time I saw her, she angrily stormed out of the house, so I wanted to make it up with her as soon as possible. But I knew that it was going to be awkward to see her, to be honest. I really didn't want to go. I reluctantly went to show my face at the family home, and my mother-in-law seemed to be in much better mood already. And then she poured a cup of tea for me, and also presented me with some bean mochi, and we sat down to have tea together. "I'm really sorry for snapping at you the other day. I got way too angry." "I am also sorry for speaking about your cooking that way. I'm going to be much more careful with my words from now on." "That's true. Go ahead, eat." "Thank you very much." I was relieved that we were able to make up, so I picked up the bean and mochi and I took one bite, but then, all throughout my mouth, was a rotten smell that I never expected before to wash over my mouth. What is this? To take a closer look at the mochi, I realized that dots were not beans, but in fact, actually mold. "Ma'am, When is this mochi from? These black dots are not beans, they're mold, isn't it? When I confronted my mother-in-law about it, she suddenly grinned and she said the most outrageous thing. This is what you get for being so rude for me when you're my daughter-in-law. Now, if you get an upset stomach here, it's gonna be a pain, so hurry up and leave. Does that mean you purposely made me eat mochi that was grown mold? This is unbelievable, that's awful! Just hurry up and get out of here. This is what you get for trying to belittle your mother-in-law. If you understand, you better not speak to me like that ever again. Know your place. And she said that. As my mother-in-law picked up the shoes that were on the front door, she threw my shoes out the front door. On the way home in my car, I started to feel uneasiness in my stomach, so I rushed to get home as fast as possible. As soon as I got to the house, I was overtaken by the most painful stomach ache, and I was unable to get up from the toilet seat for hours. When my husband came home from work, he saw the state that I was in, and he was worried. And so I decided to explain every last detail of the situation to him. When I did, he was furious.
My mom did that to you? I'll never forgive her for this! I'm gonna go back home and speak to her right now! You don't need to do anything until your stomach feels better, Catherine. So just lay down and relax.
My husband was more furious than I ever seen him before, and he immediately got in his car and headed towards his family house.
Hey, Mom! How dare you do something so awful to Catherine? Because of you, she can't get up because of the stomach pain!
What are you talking about?
Don't try to play dumb with me! She told me everything already! You fed her mochi that was growing mold, didn't you?
I don't know what you're talking about. My mother-in-law was trying to play it off like she was innocent, and then my husband was going crazy out of anger, and they were arguing in loud voices in the house. And it was then that my father-in-law, who had been quiet this whole time, quietly opened his mouth.
The bean mochi? Are you talking about the ones that were left in the cabinet for over 3 months now? That were covered in mold?
My mother-in-law heard her husband speak about it. Suddenly, she was at a loss for words. According to my father-in-law, he was testing her to see if she was going to notice the mochi in the cabinet growing mold, and when his sloppy wife was going to throw it away. When my father-in-law came out with the truth, my mother-in-law was silent and frozen on the spot. Even though my father-in-law was generally a calm and quiet person, he said one last sentence.
Anybody who's going to do something that horrible doesn't need to stay in this house!
He grabbed his wife and plucked her outside the house, and then locked the door in front of her. Honey, open up! Let me in! It wasn't on purpose, I promise! I just made a little bit of a mistake! I'm sorry, I didn't mean to!
I don't care about anybody who's going to keep lying like that!
I'm not lying, it's the truth! Please believe me!
Until you go and apologize to Catherine and she forgives you, don't even think about stepping foot in this house again!
But no way! Please just listen to me! My husband ignored his mother, who was crying and banging on the front door outside, and he came back home. He seemed very happy, and the mother got what she deserved to doing that to me. 2 days later, my stomach was feeling much better, and I was able to regain my daily life. However, ever since that day, I wasn't able to eat mochi anymore, even though it used to be one of my favorite foods. After that, my mother-in-law came over and tried to apologize multiple times, but the mochi incident was traumatic for me, and I told her that I didn't want to see her face anymore. I refused to accept her apology. My husband also told me that I didn't need to interact with his mother anymore, and I felt the big weight off my shoulders. In the end, I became estranged from my mother-in-law and never got to see her again. My father-in-law stood his ground, that until I forgave her, she wasn't allowed in the house, so in the end, she was fully kicked out of the house. I heard that she's been hopping from couch to relatives' homes, and was begging for forgiveness from her husband, who refused to budge. My mother-in-law started to hate me even more for refusing to accept her apology, and when she started sending me long messages and voicemails harassing me even more, when I showed my husband that, he told me that we should block his mom, and he did the same as well. My father-in-law had always been a stubborn person, but he was the type of person that hated liars and people who would cheat, and he said that until I forgave her, he had no intention of letting her back into the house. When my mother-in-law was spending a long period of time a nomad across her relatives, eventually they all became fed up with her and started denying letting her stay. She had nowhere to go, and I heard that she developed neurosis. As for my husband, apparently he really couldn't forgive his mother for what she did to me, and even though he heard that she had no one else and nowhere to go, and was struggling, he didn't have any sympathy for her. I am happy to remain estranged from my mother-in-law and enjoying my life with my husband and father-in-law.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.